Will Smith is expected to sign his ELC and join the Sharks this summer. Why this is the right move for him.
You're Locked On Sharks, your daily podcast on the San Jose Sharks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, welcome to Locked On Sharks, the premier hockey podcast covering your favorite team in the Bay Area. My name is JD Young, caretaker at the Reef, also the co-host of Western Conference Tuesdays on the Locked On NHL channel. I want to thank you for making Locked On Sharks your first listen. Proudly part of the Locked On Network, we cover your team every day, even when projected first-round picks are supposed to sign. So if you want to be an everydayer, all you have to do is just follow them wherever you get podcasts, or you can watch this on YouTube as well. And Shang Peng of San Jose Hockey Now reports that Will Smith is expected to sign his ELC and join the Sharks. We're going to dive into that, what that means for Will Smith, why it's the right decision. Look at how the Sharks are going to have to manage both having Celebrini and Smith on the team this year. And then, of course, we're going to do a little projected lines and kind of see where the Sharks should probably attack in free agency to try to make sure they put Smith and Celebrini in the best possible positions to succeed. So before we get into all that, do want to let you guys know that today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms and conditions apply. We were supposed to do Beckett Seneca. That's twice now. Poor Beckett Seneca's had his draft profile bumped, so that should be tomorrow. If you're looking for the Seneca profile, I'm sorry, guys. It's coming. I promise. It's ready. It's been recorded. It's sitting there ready to go. I'm actually have to re-record the intro for it because, yeah. Anyway, Will Smith expected to sign his ELC and join the Sharks. So just as a friendly reminder, with NCAA athletes, once you sign your contract, you are no longer eligible to be an amateur athlete. So once Will Smith decides to sign his contract, there's no going back to Boston College, right? That's the big decision with him, right? That's why Quentin Musty and Casper Haltonen, they've already signed their contracts. And now Luca Cagnoni from the 2023 draft class, because they're playing in juniors, right? Good luck to Casper Haltonen as he continues, in the Memorial Cup. But that's the big thing, right? Just as a reminder, once college athletes sign their ELC, they can't go back. There's no going back. We can't go back. So that's why this decision is so big. Another tangent that's worth exploring for somebody else way smarter than me is now that college athletes can get paid, does this change the decision with ELCs and college athletes? But that's a discussion for a different day. So Will Smith is going to be signing his ELC this summer. We're going to go into the premise that he does. I don't think if Shang Peng's reporting it, I'm confident that it's going to happen, right? Shang Peng is, I'd say he's the best beat writer out there when it comes to Sharks. Yes, I'm biased. But Shang is the best, right? Shang's been on the show before. He knows his stuff. He's not just going to put this out there unless he knows it's going to happen. So there could be a decision where Will Smith goes, you know what, at the very last second, maybe he gets cold feet, wants to go back, et cetera, et cetera. But we're going to go under the presumption that Will Smith is signing his ELC and will be a member of the San Jose Sharks come the fall. This is the right move, guys. And I know, I get it. They're like, you don't want to rush him. You don't want to his development, et cetera, et cetera. I've said it before and I'll say it again. If Will Smith went back to Boston College, it would be very much big fish in a small pond where he would not be able to work on the things that he needs to work on. And Elite Prospects put out this when they were doing their kind of final Frozen Four coverage. They put out this graph that's kind of stuck with me for a while. Boston College forwards, they break down their analytics. So the Perot Smith Leonard line played 433 minutes last year. Their Corsi 4 was 61.1%. So that's how many shot attempts that they took. That's the percentage of shot attempts that they took when on the ice. So the other team was getting less than 40% of the shots. The actual shots on goal was 60, almost 64%, and the goals for was a staggering 84, almost 85%. How is this line going to do? Would this line have looked going back for a second year as sophomores? And yes, maybe with like Cutter Gauthier gone, this line maybe they face a little bit stiffer competition right now. Is kind of the great thing about this Boston College is you had two legit number one lines, but still, this line was just going to go and wreck shop again. And while Will Smith does have his things he needs to work on, right? And I think playing stronger defense, and that's going to be something that he's going to need to work on. He's not going to be able to do that at Boston College because I think this team, especially that line, would just continue to do what we saw them do last year as freshmen. Oh, now they're sophomores, right? Like the best way to play, like if you have to play defense, the best way to actually play defense is by playing defense. And in the NHL, he is going to have to play defense. Okay. And there's things that the Sharks can do to help him along. I think that we'll talk about that kind of a little bit more, especially with Celebrini on the roster, what the Sharks will need to do there. But yes, I know the NHL is not a developmental league, but Will Smith is going to develop more by playing in the NHL next year than he would by playing a full season in Boston College. Because one, he's going to be playing more games, right? Going from a 40-game schedule to an 82-game schedule. Two, he's playing tougher competition night in and night out. And yes, the NHL is not developmentally, but you're going to develop when you're playing tougher competition and you're playing more games. So I think for Will Smith, this is the best path for him to get better. If we multiverse this and put Will Smith, the Will Smith timeline where he goes back to Boston College for his sophomore year, and the Will Smith timeline where he plays in the NHL this year, I think a year from now, we'll be looking at the Will Smith in the NHL as a better player because of the experience he got playing in the NHL. And I'm willing to bet on that. And yes, there's concerns on, maybe the lack of size, the defensive effort. But I think all that stuff, when push comes to shove and he has to actually do it, it'll be fine. And plus, Will Smith's amazing offensively. I think we forget about that part about it. It's just like we focus on what he can't do and forget about what he can do. And what he can do is he can drive play and he can make his line mates better. And I am willing to bet that upside. There's ways to cover up defensively, making sure he's with the right line mates, putting him putting him in positions to succeed. But we forget, he just had one of the best freshman seasons we've ever seen in the past 30 years. And, if it wasn't for Macklin Celebrini, he's probably winning the Homie Maker. Or at least, he's definitely a finalist for it. So I think we look so much on what he can't do, what he needs to work on, that you forget about why he was drafted 4th overall, and the offensive skill set that he has, and that shot, that the hockey IQ, and playing with other players of high hockey IQ. And yes, Ryan Leonard and Gabe Perreault are amazing players, and I'm sure they're going to be amazing players. But the best thing for Will Smith to become the best player possible is to make him have to adapt to new scenarios and get him away from his comfort zone of playing with Ryan Leonard and Gabe Perreault and putting him against tougher competition and letting him try to kind of figure things out. The learning curve is going to be much steeper for Will Smith, but I think a year from now, we're going to be looking back and saying this was the right move for Smith as he, hopefully kind of he is able to adapt to a tougher game, tougher competition, more games. But I think he's going to be a better player for it. And it very much is like throwing him in the deep end. But there's ways I think where when we'll explore that here in a minute, where you're not totally sink or swim with him. I think we'll dig into what to do with there, especially with Macklin and Celebrini expected to be on the roster. So we'll dig into that. Then we'll also look at projected lines with Smith and Celebrini on the team, and what I would do to try to make sure that these guys are both put in a position to succeed. If you're looking for tickets for the NBA Finals, or maybe you want to go catch an A's game, you want to go catch a Giants game, or go catch a nice concert in the summer, nothing better than summer concerts, you need to check out Game Time. They have killer last-minute deals, all in prices, views from your seat, and their lowest price guarantee. Game Time takes the guesswork out of buying NBA tickets or whatever tickets you are looking for. The thing I love about them the most is you can actually see your seats from the app. You know exactly what your view is going to look like. The only thing there's nothing worse than getting to an event and realizing you have bad seats. Actually, the only thing worse than that is when you go to check out and you get slammed with a bunch of fees. That's why if they're all in pricing, you know exactly what you're going to pay when you go to check out. No surprises, no sticker shock, none of that. They tell you upfront, these are the costs of your tickets. So take the guesswork out of buying NBA Finals tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNHL, LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. All right. We know Will Smith's going to be here. We know Macklin Celebrini is going to be here. So how do you manage two, 19 and 18-year-old kids on the roster? And I think that is going to be what Mike Grier is focused on, right? Last summer, we talked about how William Eklund is the most important person on the roster, and they should do everything they can to make sure he's put in a position to succeed. And Eklund had his very much sink and swim moments, right, where he powered through it. He went through some struggles, right? But you saw how he started kind of on the third line, and by the end of the season, he was a first-line player for the Sharks team and had a really excellent close to the season, right? I think very much, capped off by the hat trick day, a hat trick on hat day, right? And that's kind of the moment I think where a lot of us is thinking about kind of with him and what he's done. So, sorry. But how do you protect Smith and Celebrini having two young guys on this roster? And I think it's very important to surround them with veteran talent, right? And if that means breaking up the line, which was successful at the end of the season last year, I think you have to do it, right? Mikael Granlund's going to be on the roster. Fabian Zetterlund's going to be on the roster. You're hoping Logan Couture returns. If he doesn't return, you need to have a plan in place without Couture. And you can't roll Luke Cunnin as your 2C again. But what I would do is I would start Will Smith on the wing and let him getting used to the NHL game, right? While we project Will Smith to be a center long term, I would start him on the wing right now, kind of give him the Tomas Hertl treatment, let him play wing for a couple of seasons while he fills out, and then eventually move him back to center, especially as he works out his defensive game. With Macklin Celebrini, I think his two-way game is strong enough where I would start him at center, his natural position, but I would start him on the second line, right? Let Granlund take those first line minutes until Celebrini is comfortable enough to kind of overtake him. So, but what I'm doing on each line is I'm making sure that these guys are paired with a strong defensive player, right? Whether it's Mikael Granlund, you hope Logan Couture is healthy. I'm not sacrificing offense for defense, but I'm putting these guys I'm not putting them on the same line first thing, right? As much fun as that would be to start the season, you can't throw out a 18-year-old and a 19-year-old kid on the same line and say, have at it, guys, go figure this thing out. That's not fair to them. It's not like you're putting them in a really terrible spot to succeed. So, and then you try to give them both positive situations. And again, this team is going to be in a struggle this year, right? We expect to see growth, but I don't see a lot of wins coming. Even with the addition of Will Smith and Macklin Celebrini and whatever Mike Grier decides to do in free agency, I don't see this team winning a ton of games, right? Be more competitive? Yes. Be more exciting? Hell yes. Win more games? Probably not. So try to take advantage of any positive situations you can. Give these guys situations where they can build and grow confidence. That's a ton of offensive zone starts, a ton of power play opportunities, right? These guys should both be staples on the top power play unit. Again, even if it comes for the sacrifice of the Lund line, which was very good last year, these guys are your future, right? And as much as I love Mikael Granlund is not going to be here in 2 years. And Fabian Zerlund, I think, is going to be a great player, is well on his way to be a good player, but he's more like a middle six guy, right? And like there's reasons why you drafted Celebrini. You're going to draft Celebrini and you drafted Will Smith is to have them eventually take over. So putting them in situations where they can succeed early, I think will help build confidence for them. So that's what I'm doing. Stapling them to a veteran. If Logan Couture's healthy, right? I'm putting one of those guys with him, whether it's Smith or Celebrini, whoever. Stapling one of those guys to him because we saw 2 years ago, Couture was really great 2 years ago with a guy like Barabanov, and you tell me like Will Smith can't be an even better version of Barabanov. They have a lot of the same skills sets, except for Will Smith is just way better at it, or projects to be way better at it. And again, if Couture isn't going to be healthy, you have to have a real center available. So that's one way to potentially look at it, is doing that. Or again, just put competent players around him, right? Luke Cunnin, bless him, playing 2C last year. You can't do that to these guys again, and kind of stapling Eklund to Cunnin like we saw last year. This roster should be much improved. I want to see these guys put with other guys who will help make them better. So put them both in positions to succeed and manage the games here a little bit. Like if it's okay for a guy to sit a game. I think that's something we need to just remember as well too. Like 18, 19-year-old kids playing in the NHL, there's going to be a lot of ups and downs. It's not fair to like the consistent play night in and night out. So if Will Smith needs to sit a game and kind of think about things and kind of, catch his breath, or even almost kind of like managing his minutes, right? We see it in the NBA of those kind of scheduled, like, hey, we're going to sit him here. I know the Ducks were kind of looking at doing this with Leo Carlson last year, but anything like that where you're trying to get this guy through a full 82 game season and put him in the best position to succeed. And yes, maybe going back to Boston College and coming back at his sophomore year, you may not have to do this as much. But again, I'm still willing to bet that a year from now, Will Smith was going to be a better player for playing a full season in the NHL. So manage the expectations night in, night out. Put these guys in the best position to succeed by putting them in surrounding talent that can match / kind of help accentuate their skill sets. And then two, it's a it's a marathon, not a sprint here. So we'll look at some projected lines, kind of look at where Mike Grier needs to attack, especially if he's going to have Smith and Celebrini on this roster. Because again, I'm not going to be messing around with these guys. Like, I want to put these guys in a position to succeed. And if that means you have to be a little bit more aggressive in free agency, fine, right? I want to put these guys in the best position to succeed so that way they can be as good as possible as soon as possible. So we'll dig into that here in just 1 second. All right. Let's look at some lines. So here's what I did on Cap Friendly a while ago. My kind of lines right now: Will Smith, Mikael Granlund, Fabian Zetterlund. I feel like, yes, you break up the Lund line, but I think Mikael Granlund's defensive skills, I think Fabian Zetterlund's that like dog in him. I think those, like, if you were trying to almost recreate, or at least kind of recreate what you saw at Boston College that made Will Smith successful, I think these players can help do that, right? Mikael Granlund is very much more of a kind of passer, but his defensive skills, which I myself underrate, but maybe he's not the greatest defenseman, but greatest defensive center, but I think it's underrated. And again, I underrate it myself compared to what I've thought, and actually watching and seeing Mikael Granlund in his usage throughout the season. And Zetterlund, who's got that dog in him, and is a potential 25 to 30 goal scorer. I think putting Will Smith on the top line with these guys, is going to put him in the best position to succeed. So, second line, I have Eklund, Celebrini, and Klim Kostin. Eklund, again, we've seen the playmaking there. I think him and Celebrini's playmaking together is just going to be magic. I think that is a potential long-term combo. So I want to put those guys together as soon as possible. And Klim Kostin, I know we'll want to see if last year was a flash in the pan, kind of Jacob Peterson style or what. But with what we saw from him last year, that's where I'm going to kind of place him right now. But we'll talk about that kind of Zetterlund Kostin here in a little bit. The third line of Bordeleau, Couture, Phillips, Zadina. And again, this is presuming Couture is healthy enough to go. I liked what I saw from Bordeleau last year. We talked about Bordeleau kind of last week a little bit, but I really liked what I saw from Bordeleau. Phillips Zadina, I think, playing kind of that third line minutes there. And you're hoping Couture can just be like a really, really awesome 3C, like type of situation. If you want to play Couture on the second line, and maybe it's Couture, Macklin, Eklund, and then you kick Kostin down, you could potentially do that. But then you're still kind of struggling with that 3C position. Maybe it's Nico Sturm on the 3C and Luke Cunnin on the 4C. That's a potential there. So Giovanni Smith, Nico Sturm, Luke Cunnin as my fourth line. And then defense just for it. Ferraro, Benning pairing, Thrun, Emberson pairing, and Mukamadula and Vlasic pairing with Burrows and Jan Ruda as the extras. I did in this scenario, I did not re-sign Kalen Addison because the more I think about it, the more I'd rather just, instead of having Kalen Addison back, I'd rather just have Shakir Mukamadulin up here because he's part of the long-term future. Plus, yeah, we'll see with that. I still think the Sharks are going to be active to try to find somebody there, and that's a discussion for another day. Mackenzie Blackwood and Vitek Vanacek, of course, as your goalies. So the place I'm looking, though, is trying to find somebody who can play. I want to take somebody who can kind of take the Zetterlund spot, right? Playing right wing on the first line and then bump everybody down, right? So if you have free agent X as your right wing, or Klim Kostin or Zetterlund as your second line, Klim Kostin as your third line, and then Zadina as your fourth line, like I feel much better about that than here. And again, if you're Mike Grier, it's okay to spend a little bit of money now because one, you have it. And two, you want to put these guys in a position to succeed. So I'm looking, I'm going to be, if I'm Mike Grier, I'm going to be aggressive in that department. Whether it's through a trade, whether it's through free agency, whatever it is, I think that is where you need to attack. You feel good about the left side, whether it's maybe it's a little bit small between Smith, Eklund, and Bordelot. But I think you can make up for it with your on the right side there. And Klim Kostin, big dude, right? I know Zetterlund, not the biggest dude, but he plays big. Finding a physical, big right winger who can help balance things out. Again, I know Todd Bertuzzi is Bertuzzi is not the most popular name, but that's the type of guy, a guy who plays that style. Again, maybe Bertuzzi, he's not the biggest guy, but he plays big, and his role, that's the type of guy where I think you're getting a guy like that who can kind of help cover up for some of these smaller wingers you have on the left side. So and Celebrini, right, 6 foot but he plays much bigger than he actually is watching his tape. So that's what I would do. That's my projected lines. I'm sure whoever the coach is going to be, it sounds like we're down to 3 potential candidates here. In Ryan Wachowski, Nico Sturm, and Jeff Blashill. Those are kind of the 3 Elliot Friedman mentioned on his 32 thoughts, but plenty of time and opportunity to discuss what the Sharks will do there. But I think putting these guys in a position, and once Celebrini kind of is good to go and feels comfortable, you can bump him up to the first line at any point, right? It's not like, cool, go play. Mikael Granlund in this spot, he is holding down the fort until Celebrini is ready to go. And if you trade Granlund at the trade deadline, awesome. Or if you just don't re-sign him, whatever, like you found your 1C of the future in Celebrini, and now you're just trying to get him ready for that role as soon as possible. And Will Smith if he's your 2C, you're looking really like Will Smith and Celebrini is down the middle. And then with Edstrom and Beestead or whoever kind of takes that 3rd C spot, like the Sharks team is going to be really good at some point if these guys do what I think they're going to do. So, but yeah, that's going to be today's episode. We'll be back tomorrow with the Beckett Seneca draft profile. I promise, unless something else crazy happens. It'd be funny if we just never ever get to it. It's just never, something just continually happens where it never comes out. But no, that's tomorrow's episode. And then Thursday, we'll go through the 2021 draft class and look at those guys. Plus, we'll look at the goalies from the Barracuda and kind of review their seasons. So make sure you guys are following along wherever you get podcasts. And of course, you can watch on YouTube as well. Follow the show on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at Locked On Sharks. You can follow me on Twitter at MyFryhole. Till tomorrow. Bye, friends.